So, all right. So yeah, we are going to get started on designing our we're going to get started on designing our map towards success. And we are going to go through, I guess, a lot of situational stuff, but we'll talk in terms of, wherever you may be, whether it's now or in the future. But I do want to acknowledge the fact that we are in some strange times, and we can all agree that the schedule that we have now, that everybody's going through with some of the stuff, is definitely not normal. We're going through a transitioning phase where socially out there, we're not able to hang out with friends as much as we'd like to. Everything's getting a little bit more digital. So if we are talking to our friends, it's more digitally on the phone, whether it might be phone call or FaceTime or video chat. But there's a lot of stuff nowadays, or at least in our current day now, that we can start to, even given maybe like a week or a little bit more than a week where everything started to slow down, we can look back and see some of the things we had access to just a week or two ago that we didn't connect to as much, and we find a lot more appreciation around just around little things that come so easy in our life. For example, I have a friend that just moved up here, and I knew him for a very long time, from when I played baseball in college with my cousin back in Hawaii. And when I was going to school, he gave me my first job or internship. So he's a very close friend, and I kind of got to know him, throughout my college and all the way through. I was in his wedding party, he was in my wedding party, and just like little friendships like that we take for granted, and such a close friend that even he just moved up here from Hawaii a month ago, and so he's all by himself right now. And I text him every once in a while, but looking at just the little things and appreciation for friendship, those are the things that now, when times it's a lot more difficult to be able to hang out now and see each other, and it's always been convenient with phone calls, with text messages, and it's not until the fact that maybe we lose a bit of something that we fully appreciate what we had, just because we get it so often. So I did have a chance to go visit and see him for a little bit today, just for a few minutes, even though he lives so close, well, like 40 minutes, 45 minutes away. Went to go visit him for a little bit because I know he's by himself. But to think he's been here for already almost 2 months, and this is the first time I was getting out to see him, and it takes a lot. It takes a lot of change for me to realize what was just in front of me. And going forward, we don't know what's going to be happening. So if we'll be able to see or hang out in the future, or what that looks like, even brings me to every time I go back home to Hawaii. I didn't realize all the things that I had right in front of me. For instance, like the ocean, the beach, the weather, the trade winds that would blow all the time, the people. You grew up in that environment, and you just kind of forget. You get pulled into your own little world and lose track of the real important, necessary things that's right in front of us that we don't appreciate, and that we don't live intentionally towards. Excuse me. So all of us here play tons of golf, and we want to get to high levels of golf. And as much access as we had in golf just even 3 to 4 days ago, 5 days ago, we had tons of access to it. And, as the days go on and the circumstances that we have, we're getting a little bit more limited in golf and accessibility to golf. And, just thinking about that, it might, we start to think like, oh my gosh, like some of us, have college coming up next year. We're in our senior year. Some of us, are getting into high school and want to play high school. Some of us in the middle of our high school season and, have, really big dreams and hopes. And, just circumstances happen and, we start to live these almost stories in our lives. And whether you want to call it a fairy tale or not, but things are happening that that doesn't seem real. But the reality is it's as real as it gets. And we have to face reality and figure out how do we navigate from where we're going. So, the stuff we're going to talk about is, yes, it's designing the map for success, but it's going to take you a lot further where, it really doesn't matter what situation you're in, whether we're in great times or, tough times, tragic times, any kind of times, right? It's a frame that'll help you get through and get yourself back on the path that you guys want to be on. If you do have journals and notes, you do want to take some notes tonight. Again, write down, as always, write down anything that resonates with you. Take as much notes as you can, but one thing that you can start doing is take as much notes as you can, but put stars next to the things that like resonate to you right now. So you can go back and, put 1 star or put 2 stars next to really important stuff, the stuff that like you need to do right away, right? So basically it's your way of highlighting things when you go back and look at it. So, looking back at all of us now, out of school for a little bit. And the question is like, we all want to play high levels of golf, and we know that to achieve wherever it is that we want to get to, it requires practice, right? It requires effort. And given, the circumstances that we have, we still know that, I got to go hit balls. I got to go swing the golf club. I got to chip. I got to putt, and sometimes it like right now, it might be a little bit limited in what we can do, but over the last few days, right? Just a question that you want to start asking yourself is, I know for me, regardless of the times that we're in, I know that I have to be swinging the club. I know that I have to be chipping. I have to be putting, right? Thinking and looking back at the last just 2, 3, 4 days, ask yourself, did I take that effort to go swing outside for a few minutes, a few times a day, right? Maybe it was raining. So if it was raining or the weather wasn't, or maybe it was too hot, who knows, right? If the weather was different, was there a way that I could go putt in the house for a little bit, set up some activities for me to go through, right? There's always little things that you can do. So just looking back at the last few days, we can look back at what kind of habits do we have? Although we know if I want to achieve the highest level of golf, I have to be constantly practicing and playing and putting in effort. And doesn't mean you have to be doing it every single, like all day long, like a tour pro, but it definitely has to be frequently. And even if it's in bursts of, right, 2 minutes throughout the day as you're doing other things, 5 minutes, reserve, maybe if you have more time, reserve 30 minutes to, design something that you want to do, and then put yourself to it, design an activity that has a goal, has an outcome, and then go ahead and do it, right? So ask yourself just that, right? Answer that question. If you're writing down how much effort, how much time, how much practice did I put in the last few days when I may have been home for most of the day, or do we have the story that golf courses, most of them are shutting down, or I can't be outside, I got to be away from people, and look at which one of those which one of those stories took over to get you to do the action that you want. So, excuse me. So yeah, just something to think about as we get through this. And so as we start off, I do want to share, we've all been playing golf here for quite a long time. So most of you should be able to resonate to this story. And if not, I'll draw some parallels to it so you guys can associate with the story that I'll share. But, there's so many times that we've been just searching for answers to problems that you're doing, or yeah, sorry, kind of lost track here, but yeah, there's so many times that we've been, searching for problems and answers, and we get stuck on these problems, and we get frustrated only to find like sometimes, we get one piece of advice that somebody else says a different way, and it finally makes sense, and it makes all the difference in the world. So there was a story, it never happened to me, but it was shared towards me, and like it's a story that I laugh about all the time, but I use it, and it's kind of because it was so like funny, and it was so like over the top that like I can never not remember that story. So the way we remember and associate a lot of things is we just associate it to things that you'll remember forever, and draw out the value from it so you can start applying it and make it habits to apply. And it, like for me, I take this one story and all of a sudden like I see it everywhere, not the story exactly, but the principles that I get from it, and it becomes habit and just the way I process things, right? And so I have a good friend that's back home on Kauai, and he was a really good golfer, and he had a friend that he played when we both moved up here. We lived together, and he was trying to play professionally while he moved up here. And we had a friend, and one of his friends also was trying to make it professionally, and they were going and playing some mini tour stuff. They both had qualified for the Canadian tour and was traveling. And so they'd practice all the time together, and they'd play all the time. So, because one of my friends, he was one of my best friends, we're living together, I'd kind of hang out with them and spend some time with them. And it was still several years after one of my friend who moved up with me moved back home that I played golf with our mutual friend up here. And it was just so funny because he's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you got to hear this story that I was struggling one day, and this is a guy that had shot at his home course a 58 for 18 holes. So this guy is a really good golfer, and 58 on a par 71. So tons and tons under par. He's a really good golfer, hits it a long ways. And, for you to shoot 58, you have to be a heck of a golfer. But he said, I was struggling one day and we're practicing, and I just couldn't chip it. Like I couldn't get the club on the ball. I was blading it. I was chunking it. Like I just couldn't get it on the green. And like I was going for weeks, and I couldn't figure this out. So I called up one of my friends that was living at their practice together, and they said like, can you come down to the club and help me with my chipping? Because I just can't seem to figure this out. Like I've been spending, like I went to get all these lessons, and every time I play the same thing happens. And it was so funny because his reaction as he told me that, like I'm sure it must have been the exact reaction that he had when he got this advice. And the advice was, oh my gosh, you can't even chip the ball. He's like, you hit the ball 300 yards, but you're just trying to hit the ball right there. And he's pointing to the hole. And as he's showing me like this story, like how it went on, he's like, he told me like, the hole's right there. Just whack the ball right there. Like you can hit it 320 yards. Like, why can't you just hit it 20 feet right there? Right. And as easy as that, all he did from there is just go up there and whack the ball and he could chip again, right? And he went through all of these like little details, getting these lessons on how to, not chunk it, not blade it, and get it to the hole. And the one piece that he needed is somebody to just explain it to him that, it's not very difficult because you're just trying to hit it there, right? It doesn't matter how you get it there, it's just right there, right? And that whole thing where it like stuck in my head is like, oh my gosh, it's just right there, just go ahead and do it. And I was laughing so hard because I was the only one laughing as he was telling me that story, because he still thought it was pretty rude, but he understands it now. And at that time he was like, probably didn't take it as, he took it more like a joke as opposed to it was like real life answer. It was like, hit the ball right there. And so, oftentimes we're searching for, these super sophisticated answers to these questions that we start to ask ourselves. And how I draw this into like some parallels, that when I start playing golf, I started looking at, I remember playing in a pro scratch tournament, meaning it's a professional and amateur event, and it's a 4-ball, meaning it's a best ball. So we both play out the hole, and it's the best score, and that's the score that goes on the scorecard. So it's a partner one. And I partnered with a good friend, and so, I wish I had heard this story sooner, because I could have implemented it that day. But it was such a crazy day, because it was one of those days where it didn't matter what I did, and the ball just wasn't going where I wanted to go. Like, the ball was going 50 yards to the right, 60 yards to the right. I topped a few balls, right? And then, I'd go and hit irons off the tee, and it'd go just as far right as my driver. And I was like, oh my gosh, at the end of the day, the people that we played with, right, were they thought I was the amateur in the group, because my friend carried us all the way that was playing. And he's like, and it was such a laugh at the end, because the whole time the two other players that we played with thought my buddy was the pro of the group, whereas I was, because I'm the one that was teaching, and he joined me. And like, my score was so high, it was so like, it's pretty shame at that time, but it is what it is. And at the end, like, now that I think about it, is like, during that whole round, as much fun as I tried to have, I remember a comment that I think the other pro that we played with had told me. It's like, oh my gosh, like I can't believe you kept your composure the whole time, because at the end of these 18 holes, I wouldn't have had any golf clubs in my bag with how you played. And I was like, I wasn't sure if that was a compliment or some kind of wise remark, but I kind of laughed it off. But I remember going through that round, and I'm thinking like, man, the ball went right. What am I doing? And I'm doing like all these sorts of practice swings. Like, I'm not sure if you guys have been there and you didn't know where it went. And I'm on the tee box thinking, like, going through like 3, 4, 5 different swing thoughts in my head to see like which one is going to work. What am I going to do today on this hole? This is hole 2 now, and I got to figure this thing out, and I was like, well, I guess I'm going with this one. I go up there, and it's the same result, right? And every hole, every shot, it's like going through 3, 4 different like swing techniques to figure out like what's going to work here, right? And I'm coming down where, a friend of mine, my partner who's playing, we're coming down our 16th hole, and we're using we are using every single one of his shots. After 16 holes, we did not use one of my shots. And as a group, or as a team, I believe we're 4 under par. So he was 4 under on his ball, and I was just kind of going along for the ride, riding in the golf cart. And on 16, he hits his ball out of bounds, right, on a pretty short par 4. And I really didn't have a plan there, but I have all these thoughts in my head, and I was like, man, I went through 16 holes. Like, a good tee shot has to come out, right? I got to pick one winner. I can't go 16 holes without getting it. And so I figured, okay, I haven't tried this one yet. I'm going to use this swing. And it realistically was strategy. I should have just hit an iron off the tee, because it was like 320 yards on this hole, but it was really narrow, OB on the right. And I was thinking, well, if I can get this on the green, we kind of have a chance to contend in this thing. So I make my decisions. Like, I'm going to go with this type of swing on this one, which might have been my 10th or 11th type of swing that I'm trying that day. And I walk up there nervous as heck because he just hit it out of bounds and my drive was the one that was going to count. And so if you believe the nerves that I had, thinking that, okay, I'm super nervous, but this one should work and I need it to work. And I step up to it and I hit it and it goes so far right. It goes so far right out of bounds that it almost went through the driving range right. It almost went out of bounds on the other side. And then he's just like laughing and shaking his head and he couldn't believe like what I did. But anyways, long story short, we played, I played this entire round with all these different swing thoughts. My ball was going right all day. I topped some shots and, to think about just that one piece of advice of how I analyze everything now is the questions that we ask ourselves, are the questions that we ask is, what is directly going to influence the direction of our future. So wherever we want to go. And, as you get into these places of like, you get stuck, I don't know what to do. And you start asking yourself the wrong questions, right? The ones that aren't really beneficial. What swing do I need? As opposed to looking at it, the reality, if I took that concept and say like, the hole is right there, just whack it there. You would take the same thought and say, well, if my ball is going super far right, the club face is just super open or pointed to the right? Nothing more fascinating than that, as opposed I'm looking for like trying to route my swing, trying to work on all these different things, changing my grip, redirecting my golf, like everything you can think of, I've tried. And, just asking the wrong question and that one little shift of questions, could have made the entire round a different way. So, think about the questions that you ask because they 100% direct where you're going to go. And always simplify and look clearly at what you're trying to get. Like, what is the outcome that you're trying to get? Because if you don't have that clarity on where you want to go, you're always going to ask the wrong questions. You're going to let your emotions take over and kind of funnel through every thought in your head to figure out like, what is it going to be, as opposed to just looking and, deciding like, this is what's happening and asking yourself the next best question. If my ball is going right, my club face is open. What can I do to make sure that club face is not pointing, where my ball goes 50 yards right? What does my club face need to do? And you kind of work it back that way. All right. So just think about the questions that you're asking yourself. Sometimes we get stuck and, we give ourselves some of these stories that, I can't practice this week. And I couldn't play well because I didn't have a chance to practice. I didn't have this time to practice, as opposed to asking yourself a different question. Given the limited time that I have this week, I'm busy with my academics, so I have some events I have to go to, projects I need to do. How much time do I have this week to invest in the performance of my golf? Right? That gives you a totally different answer. And maybe you can say like, I only have 1 hour out of the next 7 days, but it's split in 2 different days or 3 different days that I can find a total of an hour. That gives you a totally different question to ask yourself, to say, over 3 days, and let's just say 20 minutes a day in 3 days, what could I be doing to get the furthest along in my development? Like, what's my actual target and what's going to get me closer to that target? Me being able to work only 20 minutes for 3 different days, or for me to put an hour this week, or maybe it's even 30 minutes where we're super busy and we got to search for, bits and pieces of time, and it's fragmented everywhere. And you're just asking, like, given the time that I have, given the situation that I have, what can I do to make the hugest impact on getting to the destination that I want to get to? Totally different answer than saying like, how do I find time? Right? Or I was too busy, so I couldn't practice, and my practice normally takes an hour, so I couldn't practice. Right? How am I supposed to find time to practice when I only had 30 minutes and I typically do an hour? You're always going to get the wrong answer, as opposed to, change the question around, get a little bit more clear on where you want to get to and what you need to do. And I promise you, you'll always find the right question to ask. And if you ask the right question, it gives you totally different answers. And the answers that you get from these questions are the ones that direct you to where you need to get to or where you want to get to. So, excuse me, as easy as it sounds, right? Just ask yourself better questions. Our emotions oftentimes get in the way. So you might ask, how do we ask better questions, right? Because when I get there and maybe you're all stressed out because you have so much to do, it automatically goes into, a default mode or like an autopilot mode where you're reacting and your questions that come out are just so automatic, right? And it's hard to shift those things, right? So it's about developing habits in the back end, habits that you do all the time that switch you into a mindset that, just like this one story affected like how I think, it affected and kind of burned this image in my head that every time I look at things, it's always a little bit different, right? So, and well, a little bit different from where it used to be, several years back. So, a few questions that you can ask yourself, like that you condition yourself to ask is take yourself out of the equation, right? Make it more about other people, make it more about like how you can serve others, right? So you can say like, what is something that I can do for someone else today, right? Gets you to work a different creativity in your head as you think and have that be one of your first questions of the day. You start thinking like, how can I help somebody else today? Do I know somebody that needs help and how can I help them? Maybe it's a call. Maybe I know one of my best friends told me something that they were frustrated with. Maybe how can I help them? Maybe I can just send them a text or like a video note saying like, hope you're feeling better, this and that, right? And, how can I help others, right? You can say, what's something that I could add value towards everybody else, right? Not maybe somebody I don't know. And just say like, what's something that I might see at the golf course, something that I might see constantly, like if I'm at school in a social environment, right? What can I do to just add value there, right? You're thinking outside of yourself. And, finally, you can ask something like, start asking yourself more of these questions. What can I offer others to get them in a better place, right? Because now you take yourself out of the equation and you start thinking about everything outside of yourself. And what this does, it gets you to not put yourself first, right? The main reason why we start using emotion in our questions is like, I can't do this because how am I supposed to find time when I don't have time? It's because we're putting ourselves in the front of everything, right? And if we're always looking to serve ourselves first, the moment we start to react, the moment we start to panic a little bit, when things go wrong, we're always going to put ourselves in the front and say like, how do I get this thing better, right? Already that's the wrong question to ask, because now that's me on the golf course slicing the ball 50 yards right every single shot. And I'm asking, how do I make this better, right? And I'm going through swing theory. I'm going through everything in the book you can think of, as opposed to, condition yourself to just process things differently. Take yourself out of the equation, right? And as easy as it sounds now, when we're all calm and collective, it's easy to say it, but when emotions come in, that's the one thing we're going to always pull in. It's going to be like, if you aren't conditioned to put other things before yourself, to problem solve and look at it from an external view, it doesn't matter how much you know this concept that we're talking about now, when it comes down to you're playing on the golf course and you have that one shot that doesn't go well, right? You'll automatically put yourself first. How do I make myself do this so I don't feel judged? So I don't want to shoot this high score. Everybody's counting on me, I've been working so myself is counting on me, and you're putting yourself always too high above where you're trying to deliver. I guess you're trying to deliver to yourself what you want at that moment, but you're so blinded that you really don't know what you actually need at that time. So start, rephrasing things and start putting yourself in a more like serving place where you just start to, help others, and look at from that external point of view. And, as you condition these habits in, then all of a sudden you get these scenarios, right? It doesn't happen by accident that, you know, that we start to problem solve a little bit differently. Um, so if you want to start, you know, elevating your golf game and finding the fastest possible way to get to like all of your goals and your targets, start to think about the questions that you ask yourself and what kind of conditions that you have to put in place to make sure you're asking yourself the right questions, or, you know, at least asking yourself better questions. You know, be the best problem solver, you know, that you ever can be. Be a better problem solver than you know who you are yesterday, right? You're not trying to compare against anybody else, but if you continue to improve yourself from where you were, right, the better the problem solver you are, the more problems you get through. The more problems and obstacles you get through, the further in your career, the further in your skills that you will get. You know, the ones, you know, when we get stuck and we feel like we're not moving and we get frustrated, it's because we hit this level and we hit this obstacle and we're stuck on that for a week. We're stuck on that for a month. We're stuck on that for 3 months, 6 months, for a year. And we feel like we just can't figure out how to get through, right? And it's all about getting yourself to just, what's the problem in front of me? And, you know, what questions do I need to ask to give myself the answers, you know, that'll get me through those. So think about those, you know, as we get through off to our next one. You know, I do want to discuss a little bit on, you know, we often know what to do, and that's part of, you know, why we're all here, right? Like, if you've joined us in the past, you know, I always talk about knowing, you know, where you want to be, right? Have that clear picture. But once we have that picture, everybody here, you know, already probably has, like, I know I want to get here. I know this is what I have to work on. These are the skills I need to do. But, you know, there's a reason why we're not doing what we know we should do, right? And we have these beliefs and stories that get in the way, whether it's time, whether I'm busy, whether it's, you know, finding different ways to get to where we want to get to, but we always have something that prevents us from doing what we want, right? And I want to share with you just a little strategy and tool to just help you understand why is it that we know what to do a lot of times, but oftentimes we don't do the things that we know we should do, right? And, you know, when we do it, sometimes we sometimes get forced into it by so much frustration that it's going to go either one or two ways, right? I'm either going to give up, or I have to do something because of some kind of fear. I don't want to stay like this forever, and you're just fed up on it, and then you start doing the things that you need to do, right? Or, you know, but if you look at other things you enjoy doing, other things you get excited about, and think about when you're doing, like, playing your best golf, right? Everything comes so easily, right? You want to go and practice. You want to spend more time on the golf course. You want to start, like, being a little bit more disciplined and figuring out how to design your golf game, right? And it's might be the same season, it might be the same week, and you might have days that are totally opposite, where, like, you're so frustrated and you finally do it, or, you know, where you're having to push yourself through it, and there's other days that it's so seamless and you just get drawn and pulled to it, right? So the way you do it for longevity, to make sure you continue to work towards the end, is you have to be pulled in there, right? And everybody in here probably has felt that feeling of, you know, being pulled into what we want to do, because it's, you know, it's fun playing good golf, right? It's fun hitting good shots. It's fun making pars. It's fun making birdies. It's fun competing in golf tournaments that we play well in, right? But the part I want to get you through is when it's hard, when we know what to do, but we're just not doing it. And we just don't know why, right? And we logically, or we rationalize with ourselves to give ourselves the stories to let us know it's okay why we're doing what we're doing, or, you know, telling ourselves, you know, I think I need a break today, you know. So uh, you know, I remember, you know, a few years ago, and I'll kind of go back to that story that I played with, you know, one of my friends in that pro scratch event, where that was such like an emotional busting experience, that because like if that didn't burn into my mind, man, you know, I don't know what would have happened. But that was such a crazy experience that for a long time after that, kind of like I always was shy playing around, like playing with other people, because at that time, like leading up to just a few years ago, I didn't play much golf. And so I could hit golf shots on the range because I'm there all the time. But up until a few years ago, I wasn't playing much golf. So I wasn't scoring very well. And I was just really ashamed and embarrassed to want to play with other people. And I'd kind of rather just choose to play on my own. Whereas like nowadays, I don't want to play by myself. I'd rather, you know, play with other people. But, you know, it's feeling that internal judgment that, oh my gosh, like if that one guy said that at the end of the round and said like, you know, I can't believe you still have golf clubs. If it was me, I wouldn't have any golf clubs in my bag after the round that, you know, you just put together there. And, you know, as much as I kind of wanted to just laugh that thing off, right? That was like something that stuck with me for like a pretty long time after, because now every time, you know, I wanted to play and I was like, somebody invited me to play, it was like, oh, am I gonna, you know, give that same performance that I did in that one event that I played? And um and every time I get invited, I'll be like, oh man, I gotta go practice extra this week, because now I'm playing in a week, and let me hit as many balls. Let me see if I can get on the course and get comfortable, and like just totally stress myself out just to go play casual golf. And, you know, I don't know about you guys, but for me, that was huge, because you know, there was so much internal judgment on what the people I would play with might think of me, what, you know, my own judgment on myself, saying like, man, if I post these like high scores and I can't even hit the ball on the course, like who's gonna wanna, you know, take golf instruction from me, right? And he's gonna tell all his friends, and like, don't go see this guy, he can't even get off the tee. And, you know, it's tough, right, to be in there. So if you've ever been in a place where, you know, whether you're judging yourself based on, you know, external things or internal things, maybe it's your expectations, you know, that's a super, super difficult thing to get through, because it doesn't matter how much you start to practice, right? It doesn't feed the fact that it's a fear that you have, right? There's not like, I've hit thousands of balls after that. And, you know, even after hitting thousands of balls, I could be, you know, I could go play by myself and shoot even par for 9 holes. And the next day I would be nervous, thinking that I might shoot like a 50, not knowing what's going to happen, right? Just because like I have all these internal fears. So you have to figure out, how do you make a radical shift? And now, you know, I love playing with people. Like playing with people is the only way I would prefer to play, just because I like the social aspect of it, right? Whether, you know, I shoot, like, I think this year I shot a 90 something one time, right? Playing with some friends, right? And, you know, that's the least of like my concern now, right? I had fun. I could leave shooting that. I can't remember what I shot. It was definitely in the 90s though. And, you know, instead of being embarrassed and frustrated, I could look back and see like what caused me to shoot the score that I have, and to get a little bit more clear on the picture that I want to do. And then, you know, work on the skills and see the reality that my skills needed to, you know, be at this place if I wanted to do it. And, you know, sometimes we take breaks and we get re-energized. If you've ever been out there and you said, well, it's so frustrating, I got to take a break, right? And, you know, for most of you, if you're on this call, if you've taken a break before, you've probably come back re-energized because, you know, you felt like you wanted to play more golf, or you felt like, oh, it's been enough and I really miss the golf, and you start playing and you get this sense of energy inside and you come back strong, right? But on the flip side, right, if you're all here, you might have taken breaks and you've all come back. On the flip side, I've also played with players, and, you know, I've taught players in the past that have taken a break and was so frustrated that they couldn't get re-energized and they never played it again, right? You know, my sister, for example, played very good golf in high school. Earned herself pretty much a full ride to Division I college. I think by the end of her senior year, she had a full ride. So she played very high level college golf. But, you know, for her, she took a break from it after college and she's never played it since, right? She graduated college in 1994. And I think she might have played maybe less than 5 rounds from 1994 till now, right? The thought of her playing more golf just doesn't excite her. She likes the thought of playing good golf, but she doesn't like the thought of playing golf that could be bad, right? So, you know, there's players that take a break and feel like you need a break and you just never come back. So the point is, it's not the break that you need, right? It's a way to start to re-energize yourself to want to do something a little bit differently, right? Think of different ways to get through the problems or the obstacles that's keeping you from gaining any kind of momentum. You know, the part is like when things, in anything that we do, when things aren't going our way, like that's just a habit of nature. We just don't want to do it anymore, right? And that's our first internal reaction. Like the moment like things get hard and we struggle a little bit, we get some poor results or some results that's below our expectations or what we want, and we get that over and over again. It's like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? Should I even be doing this? That's the first thought, right? And it's a belief that you start to build in to start to change that story around, to say like, well, maybe I should do this, and start doing changing the strategy, changing the approach, doing something differently. So, you know, what's the difference between when you get re-energized or you get energized after like good rounds of golf, right? If you can imagine playing your best round of golf today, right? What did I feel like when you posted that score? How excited were you to share that with everybody? Right? If you made your first birdie, if you made a hole in one, you hit your furthest drive, you're like super excited. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I did that. You know, I hit it 2 inches from the hole. I tapped it in for birdie. I shot my even par. I shot under par for the first time. I had my best golf tournament, right? Your body starts like moving. Your body starts reacting. You start getting super excited. And, you know, looking in on that excitement, right? What happens when you get excited, right? Your body starts moving. Your body starts, you know, jumping up and down. If you've ever watched sports on TV, what happens when the sports team that you're watching like scores a point or makes a game-winning score or wins the game? You start jumping up and down, start cheering. You know, you might be high-fiving your friends, high-fiving people that you don't even know, right? And when you see other people doing that kind of stuff, right, you just like, you might not be even a sports fan, and you see people around you start jumping up and down, then all of a sudden, like, you kind of like perk up and you look around, oh my God, what are they doing? And you kind of get excited, even if you don't get up, right? That, you know, physiology change, you know, starts everything. So if you need, like, if you get down, right, the first thing that you do is like, it's a radical shift in like what your body does. It's your physiology, right? What happens when we're not playing as good as we want? What happens when, you know, you tell yourself like, I know I'm supposed to practice this week. I'm supposed to like write out how I'm going to design my thing and schedule everything out. But, you know, I don't know if it's even going to help, right? You give yourself that little story. What happens to your body? Like, you start looking down, your shoulders slump over, and like you start moving slower, right? Because it's not exciting to, you know, to go and plan out something. It's not exciting to say, I gotta go practice more, when you practice the last 3 weeks in a row and you got the same result. right? So like we start to slouch, we start to look down, and we're like, oh, I guess we got to do this again. And you're looking at how much excitement goes into that. So you take that physiology and then you apply it to practice. What kind of result will we get? We're not going to get the greatest results, but how addicting is that feel? Like, what will that do to our performance for us to want to do it the next day and then the next day, right? It's obviously it's a wonder why, right? We say I just need a break, because we're kind of entering our world of practice already knowing that, in our belief that it's probably not going to work because I've been doing it for the last 3 days. I've been doing it for the last month. I've been doing it, as opposed to, thinking about earlier what we talked about, asking yourself different questions to then, get that to kind of spark your interest. But, the moment you like start to like kind of shelter and close up is the moment you should be like, oh my gosh, what do I do now? Like, this is what's happening. This is reality. Then I'm going to go, right? You spark your interest. You get yourself into a different state, right? A more peak performance state. Right? What else happens when, when we are playing well and we get pulled into the thing to practice, right? And sucked in to make it super enjoyable, right? We use better language. We say, oh my gosh, it's incredible what just happened today, right? I made 3 birdies today. I made the most pars. I shot this round. I hit my furthest drive. It was like unbelievable that practicing finally paid off, right? And we start using a different type of language, right? As opposed to think the opposite way when, we're not playing our best golf, when we are, maybe even when we're tired, right? We're showing up tired. We had an exhausting day. What kind of language are you telling yourself? Even if you might be playing pretty good golf, you might be saying like, I'm kind of tired. I don't feel like doing it right now. And with that language, all of a sudden it leads to actions that, will go with the type of language that you use. So the type of language, empowers all of the actions that you do. If you start, using discouraging language, it's going to give you the discouraging actions that will take its place. If you use empowering language, right, then you start, talking yourself into doing the thing that you need to do. It starts off like, think about the language that we use in our everyday life, right? As we think about it now, you can say like conceptually makes sense, right? Just talk good. But when it comes down to like, what happens when I'm not playing very well, when I've been working on this for a long time, I'm going to go like, hey, let's just jump up and down and say, I'm going to do it, right? That's super difficult to do, right? So it's a habit that you have to build so you can do it when things aren't going your way, right? Like the most simplest things that happens in our everyday life is you see people all the time, and what do they say, right? They say, how you doing? And what's our normal response? Our normal response, I'm doing okay. Okay. So, right? Same old day, right? What if we change just that response there to like, when somebody asks you, how are you doing? You go, oh my God, it's an amazing day. This just happened, right? How are you doing? I'm awesome. How are you doing? Right? And you're going to find like, now you might think like, oh my God, you're crazy, right? But start to condition yourself to speak in better language just in your everyday talk. It's not something that we just transition to like, if I want to do good, I'm going to talk good, right? It's how do I build these things so when things do come up, it's not a force to get there. It's like, I'm already speaking like this, right? So, I challenge you guys all to like, no longer say I'm good. I'm okay, right? Search and find for like the amazing moments and be ready for somebody to ask you how you doing, so you can then just go, I'm super amazing today. Like I walked here 5 seconds faster than I would have, or I just found something out that I never knew before. Would you like me to share that with you, right? Get excited about things, right? So, just simple little habits like that. Then all of a sudden, when we build that into our everyday talking, not all of a sudden when we're we're not doing so good, it's not so much of a big shift to say like, use encouraging, empowering language. It's like your encouraging, empowering language should be a part of what you're doing already, and finally, as you're playing well again and performing well, excuse me, what else are we doing that's differently, right? Our focus is different, right? We're focusing, like when we're playing really good and we come off like our best performance, pars, birdies, shooting our best rounds. It's so easy to think about what we could achieve, being super optimistic and focusing on like the bigger picture, focusing on like the successful things that I should be working on, as opposed to what happens when we're not playing well, or when we're in a slum, in a rut, when we're doing everything that we think we can to get ourselves out of it, and it's just not working, right? Our thoughts are like, the first thing that we're conditioned to do is like, well, I guess that's not going to work. What else could I do? That's probably not going to work. I've been working on this for the last 6 hours, no results, right? I've been working on trying to fix my ball flight for the last 6 months, probably not going to work, right? So it's two opposite extremes of what happens, right? So you have to look at what's the success habits that we have, right? What kind of focus do we have that makes us and pulls us towards the things that we need to do, right? Why is that so important? Because what we focus on, again, in just our everyday lives, are what's going to transition to our golf game, right? If you're the person that always has these discouraging, negative, thoughts or focuses in your head, like, and your first thing is always to challenge like the success and say like, well, that probably won't work with me, right? Start to change that psychology around and look for the success, and like, oh my gosh, this could happen with me, I just need to do it this way. Or this could happen with me, I have to find somebody else in my area that has gained the success, right? Start to become a little bit more resourceful, right? And draw your focus to be, on the optimistic side, and search for the success, as opposed to, we start to think about the negatives and how it doesn't work, right? Because of, again, we put ourselves first, right? Our situation, I didn't have time, I couldn't do it this week, my clubs don't fit, it was raining outside, it was hot, I was tired, right? Challenge yourself to think differently, challenge yourself to focus on the success, focus on finding the success to solve the problems that you have, right? In everything, not just golf, right? Then when golf things come up, then, it's easy to divert the focus to like, well, you won't go to like, well, that won't work with me. It's like, how is that going to work with me? Like, what do I have to do to make that work? Or this one didn't work here, but what's the next one that I can do, right? You're always challenging yourself for success. So I just heard this story. I heard it a week ago, and then I had just got reminded about it today. So I want to share the story that I heard. It's called The Tale of Two Wolves. So I'm going to read this to you because I printed this out, and and around getting yourself to like just push through and break through, as opposed to waiting for the good times to come out that pull you out. Sometimes you just need that push. You have to force yourself out of the place that you're at, which means you're doing something radical, you're doing something different, right? To challenge yourself, to get yourself back in a mode that then pulls you and draws you towards the outcome that you want. So this story is called The Tale of Two Wolves. So excuse me, I'm gonna have to look down and read this, but I thought it was such a great story, and it would have been perfect. It was perfect for me to share with you guys tonight. So excuse me. So it starts off. One evening, an elderly Cherokee brave told his grandson about a battle that goes on inside people. He said, My son, the battle is between two wolves inside all of us. One is evil. It is anger, envy, jealousy, sorrow, regret, greed, arrogance, self-pity, guilt, resentment, inferiority, lies, false, pride, superiority, and ego. The other is good. It is joy, peace, love, hope, serenity, humility, kindness, benevolence, empathy, generosity, truth, compassion, and faith. The grandson thought about it for a minute and then asked his grandfather, so which wolf wins? The old Cherokee simply replied, the one that you feed it. So the moral of that story, if you guys kind of listen closely to it, is we have two internal voices that's constantly going off. One spitting to us like all of this positive stuff. You can do it. You can do anything you set your mind to it. The other one is saying like, no, you can't. You've been working on this for a long time, right? You tried. You saw 5 different golf coaches in 6 months. You've been working hours, and your score hasn't changed in 1 year, right? And it's constantly battling out. Right. And when they mean like the one that you feed it wins, is whichever one you just draw the attention to constantly is the one that's going to take over. So there's not one, better or worse wolf or internal thought that's going. It's the one that's always going to win is the one that you give the attention to. Right. And as simple as it sounds, right, that if we condition ourselves, it's something that never goes away, right? You could be having the most success and you'll always have both voices in your head, right? It's something that you battle every day to say, and you're giving yourself the choice to say like, which wolf, which voice am I going to feed today, right? And if you think about it that way, and don't think that if I continue to think good, I'll never have bad thoughts. The reality is you're always going to have both voices in there. The skill that you want to develop is choose to always go to the good wolf, the good voice, and then push the negative one away, right? You'll be having the most success that you ever had. Like if you're on this call, right, that means you've achieved a ton of success already over your golf career, over anything you've done in your career. But there's more, right? That you've struggled as well, and as much success as you had, like you can think about the last year of your golf career, year of your life, like how many things did you overcome? Do you still have those thoughts that kind of keep you where you're at? Do you still have those voices that tell you like probably not going to work today, right? Doesn't matter how much success you have, right? It's always your choice every moment to decide like which wolf are you going to feed. So don't think about trying to eliminate the bad voice or the bad wolf. Think about feeding the good wolf so many times that it becomes a habit that you hear the bad one and you ignore it, and then you choose to supplement and feed and give your energy to the good one, right? The one that's giving you the positivity, the one that's giving you the better questions, right? If you're in that better state, think about, you always give yourself better questions from that place. So going into like what we just talked about, right? The one tool that I thought was most helpful is, the 3 things that we just talked about is how do you alter and force yourself out of anything that you're in and create like this jolt in your system, right? It's Tony Robbins is one of my favorite guys to listen to. And, he calls it his peak performance triad, right? So if you ever look that up, it talks about, triad is like a triangle or like that, right? It's your physiology is on one. It's your focus and it's your language. Those 3 things drives 100% of your performance. What drives it the fastest is always going to be your physiology, right? Your focus and language, right? It's easy to just tell yourself and fool yourself, but it's hard to fool your body, the motion of your body, right? If you're ever right in any place, like right now we might be tired or we might be sitting down, our body's kind of exhausted, right? If you guys can do it here on the call, or you can wait until we're done. But I challenge you guys all to do this, right? If we're writing, we're listening, right? If you come up and you just kind of step back, we might be kind of exhausted, and you just kind of stand up like this, and then you just start jumping up like you won the World Series or you won your biggest golf tournament. You're gonna start laughing, and you'll find like all this excitement. You might go like, yes, and do that kind of stuff. Like you just want something, and all of a sudden, like, it's easy to think about good things from here, right? If I'm sitting down like this and you say like, okay, I'm going to think about, I just won the Masters, or I just won, you know, the US Amateur, I just won my high school championship. And you're going to be like, yeah, I'm going to do that tomorrow. But if you jump like, yes, I just won the Masters, and you're holding up your trophy like this, and you're like, oh my gosh, what does this feel like? It's a different feel, right? You're going to see yourself smile. Even if you're joking around, and you'll find yourself in a place that then allows you to think differently, right? You can start to think now like, oh, how good can my future be now? And then you'll start to ask questions and give yourself some answers, but then get excited about it, change your physiology, and then notice how easy it is to drive your focus, how easy it is to drive your language in the direction that you want to get to. So the most radical way to change your state is physiology, right? You see it in every sports possible, right? Watch basketball, watch football, watch those big arenas, right? How games get turned around when the crowd goes wild. They even try and pump the crowd up to get them excited, right? To make these big shifts. So drive your physiology to then get your focus in the direction that you want to go and get your language in the way, and use that triad to get yourself into peak state, peak performance state, right? Which leads us to like our last part here is just everything that you do, every action that you do, every decision that you do, you should always be making it from a peak performance state, in a state that is going to be how you want to show up, right? If I'm here designing how my week's going to go, and designing how my practice is going to go today, or designing how I'm going to prepare, for my season, and I'm coming from a place where, oh man, I don't know what's going to happen because I can't go golf today. The golf courses are shutting down. I can't practice with anybody, right? If you think from that place, everything that you write down on the sheet of paper that you have in front of you is going to be things that you may write down, but you're never going to do. Or if you do them, it's going to take you down the wrong path because you're not present in the place that you want to be, right? Get yourself changed. Like before you make any decision, before you work on anything, right? Get yourself into that peak state, right? Maybe just like walk around, stand up, visualize, get yourself in that place. Imagine yourself like what it feels like to get to that destination, and then write your plan, and then start to practice, right? And then start making the decisions on what you're going to do, right? And I promise you that that's what's going to give you the answers that you're looking for, right? If you ever saw me before I get on these calls, like I'm as nervous as my first one as I am on this one right now when I get started. I'm definitely more comfortable once I get going, but like before I hit like that invite button to have everybody, all of you come in, like my heart is like beating up. I'm like having to go in the bathroom, jump up and down. I have to scream. I have to like get myself right in a different place, right? I have to get myself reliving like everything that I'm telling you guys and going through this call that I have tonight to get myself in a space to be comfortable to share with you guys certain things. Otherwise, the things that I'm delivering just may not make sense, or it may not connect to you guys, right? And you're going to see like the nervousness in my actions, in my hands, in my voice, right? I've looked back at my first video versus that I recorded versus the one that I have now, right? It's like, to me, it's night and day. The comfort that I have, where like I keep a clock here, and I know I'm a little bit over right now, but for time, but I remember that first few that I'm like, oh my gosh, I hope I can make the time and I hope I have enough to say, and I hope it makes sense, right? And it's all this different beliefs, right? Because of the uncertainty that I have, right? As opposed to like, you know, getting certain about the content that I want to tell you guys, right? Obviously, I'm preparing before, right? I have like a ton of notes that I write out for these things, so I'm always prepared. But that nervousness, if I don't get myself and change my state, get into a better place, even before like I review like what is on these sheets and how I'm gonna like navigate through this, right? If I'm just sitting down like at my desk or on the couch and just reading these things like this, right? It's going to be so much more difficult for me to deliver like the content to you guys, as opposed to like I got to start myself seeing how this thing will end up, and then going through my notes, then going through all the stories that I'm going to share, then figuring how I'm going to connect it all in to the tools I want to share to you guys with you guys, right? And only then, right, can I be ready and prepared, right? I can spend like hours like getting myself ready, and if I'm not getting myself in the place that I need to be, right, even to, you know, create like what I wanted to do on this call tonight, right, I had to get myself in a better place, right, in a peak state on how I wanted, what's the message that I wanted to get out to you guys tonight, what's the tools that I wanted to teach you first, before I could then figure out how am I going to connect everything together, how am I going to make sense of it, how am I going to, you know, tie in stories that will resonate with your scenarios, right? I can't just write stuff down and just read it, right? Because then it won't draw any connection. So everything that you do, right, it's a habit that you do. Don't just do it around, like if you just did it like every time I go play golf, right, I'm gonna get myself in a good state to get excited and go play well. That really doesn't work, right? But if you do it every time you practice, right, every time you get to the golf course, you spend a few minutes, right, getting yourself in the state. Every time you figure out this is what I have to create for myself, this is the design I have to do, um, right, and you do it every single thing. This is how I'm going to do my homework, right? Imagine getting that A. What do I have to do to get that A studying? Right, get yourself in that peak state. Every time you have a big decision that you have to make and you're on the fence, right? You're on the fence because you're not in the peak state that you need to be in, right? Get yourself in a peak state. And if you're ever on the fence, it's going to be clearly one or the other, because you're going to be in a lot different place than just like, well, what should it be, right? Every decision that's important to you, right? Every decision that you make, every action that you take should fit the scenario that, you know, you want it to be, right? So, you know, if you're a pretty calm person and you perform your best being calm, you're not going to be jumping up and down thinking like you won the Super Bowl, right? You're going to get into whatever state that you can get into that gets you to be the clearest, gets you to perform the best, right? Only you know what that is for you. But everybody gets excited, right? So figure out what is that excitement that you need to get to. Start moving your body, right? Maybe you might not be jumping up and down, but maybe you might be like, whew, that's it, and you're in a better place, right? Maybe it's, you know, moving, like maybe you're just like, maybe it's just like chest up, stand tall, right? That gets you into a better place. Change your physiology. Then now you can start, you know, narrowing in or driving your focus and your language towards where you want to get to. So, you know, kind of wrapping all of this up is, you know, how we're going to design like your plan, right? It has everything to do with getting yourself in this peak performance state, you know, that we just talked about there. And once you're there, you're at the best part that you'll be in, right? And then from there, you're able to drive and ask yourself the questions that you need to ask, right? And not so much the questions that are keeping you. You're going to just ask yourself better questions, right? You're going to go in, you might ask for help when you need help, as opposed to like the question might be, you might be asking yourself like, man, I've been working on this for so long. How do I figure this out? Like, I don't know what to do. What else can I try? Whereas the question that, you know, you get yourself into like this better place, peak state on like how to solve problems, you're going to be like, man, I tried everything that I know. Maybe it's time, who do I ask to get help, right? Who do I know that encountered some of the problems that I've been going through right now? All right. Is it a teammate? Is it a coach? Is it a friend? Is it a parent? Right? Is it anybody? So I can get a perspective of what what they went through to get through this, right? So sometimes it's asking who, right? And, knowing when, to ask the right questions is going to be key. So, designing your success, right? You all know what you're supposed to be doing, right? You guys all have coaches that you're working with that's constantly telling you like how you're going to practice, how you're going to design your things, what is the biggest impact that's going to get your game the furthest. And if you don't, you probably know already just from seeing all the practice and the performance that you have like this map drawn up in your head and how to get there. But the one thing that's keeping you from executing it on a consistent basis is, your ability to just move forward and do the things that you know, right? So, that being said, designing your map towards wherever you want to get to, just, get into your peak state, drive your questions to, your questions are directly influenced to, the end goal that you want to get to, right? And start putting the pieces that you need to get, like, given the circumstances that we have now, what's going to make the biggest impact. Look at everything as an opportunity, right? Just because we can't, like in our situation now, we can't play as much golf as we would like to, but look at it as an opportunity. It's a perfect time to separate yourself from, everybody else who might be telling the stories, right? And when I say everybody else, it might be yourself prior to this call that says like, what am I going to do that I can't go play golf every day? Right? What am I going to do that I can't hit balls every day? Right? Instead ask like, what can I do given the resources that I have right now? Right? Become extremely resourceful, right? If we're not in school, right, we can block off times. What can I design in like 5 to 10 minute blocks? And what is my week going to look like going forward, right? Design out that week and start putting pieces in play. Can I go swinging outside in the yard for 5 minutes? Right? If I'm having trouble chipping, drop some balls in the yard, maybe grab a carpet, do something, chip in the house, go putt in the house. Maybe it's as easy as just holding a club in your hand, working on your grip, because maybe your grip is something that, we take for granted that we need to work on. It's doing something that matters to the end, right? And if you know where you need to get to at the end, right, then you're able to see with the amount of time that you have, you can find tons of things to do. And with any scenario that you're in, whether you have access to a golf course every single day or, for whatever reason, you don't have access to any kind of golf course or golf facility around you, right? We have golf clubs, you have golf balls, you have a home, there's outside, there's a driveway, right? Not all of us have a yard, but we can go in the front, put a carpet down, hit plastic balls. I grew up hitting ping pong balls in my house, right, to work on wedges. And it started as just something that I don't even know who came up with it, but we ended up flicking ping pong balls and we saw that it curved. And we were trying to hit like different little mugs on the ground. And once we found that it curved, then we were like, oh my gosh, can we do that with the club? And it turned into like a little game, right? So that became such a fun game that we learned how to flight the ball low, high, curve it right, curve it left indoors, which, you might think if I told you, oh, you can learn how to draw it, hook it, hit it low, hit it high, make it spin, or have it spin more inside the house, you think I'm crazy. But I can tell you 100%, the way me and my brother learned how to flight the ball was in the house, and we didn't have a big house, right? Hitting ping pongs back and forth, trying to curve it. Then when we get to the course, oh, let's try that with a real ball, right? And so sometimes, the situations that come up, right? And a lot of times actually the situations that come up give us more opportunity because it gets us to become more resourceful, right? As opposed to, as we talked about earlier, we get stuck in these modes that we're just on autopilot. We take things for granted because we're doing it all the time, right? Gives us a chance to see and look back at what we had access to and now we don't have access to. It makes us appreciate what we had. So gets us to become creative. And, as things get back to normal, as we have more access to the things that we want, right, then we can look at, oh my gosh, I can I can show up with more intention because I do have this. I remember when we didn't have access to this, right? And for us, hitting ping pong balls in the house, it was just because we had, no transportation some days, right? We just were home after school, and we just messed around in the house, right? Sometimes it was after dinner, hitting it back and forth, and we played these games, and we're super competitive growing up. And so it never really, in that aspect, never really came down to we couldn't do this. We just found ways. Obviously, there was other stories that went on that, why I couldn't shoot certain scores, or why was I spending so much time and not making the achievements that I have, right? And blaming it on certain situations there, right? And now it's a lot more clear that how it's all belief and mindset that gets us to do what we really need to do. So never a lack of resources that we have, it's a lack of resourcefulness. So given our circumstances now, like, just become the most resourceful person on this planet, right? And just know that no matter what happens, there's a way, right? We learned a few tools tonight to kind of direct you and help you find that way. But if you just understand, no matter what the situation, there's always a way, right? You'll always be able to find and navigate your way back to like the map and the path that's going to take you to where you want to get to. So thank you guys very much for your time. Normally we would have called on somebody to put you on a hot seat, but I did get a little carried away on some of the things tonight and went a little over on time. So thank you all so much for joining us. Seiko's telling me to do one. If you guys are up for it, I have some time right now. So we will do one and we'll do it. We'll make it quick. So I'm gonna do one where just so you know I can see you. So I'm gonna call the person that I think doesn't want to be called. All right, we'll go with Miss Caitlin tonight. So, Miss Caitlin, you are here.
Hi.
Oh, hi, Caitlin.
Hi.
So
every single time, I swear.
Yeah, but
never fail.
Oh, you're saying you can't. So this time, no excuses. So we'll go over one really quickly, and we'll break it in a way so everybody draws some value on this. So, given what's going on right now in your golf, what's one thing that you found the most success in over the last, let's say, 30 days? And maybe elaborate on that.
Let me think, hold on. Over the last 30 days, I just finished my season and I had a couple tournaments that I finished too. And the most growth that I've had over this season and over the couple tournaments that I played was in my short game and in my putting.
Okay.
So over the last 30 days, I've been trying to work on my full swing since my putting is doing well right now, and I've had some success with that too. Okay. I think I understood the question.
No, you did. So I'm going to go a little bit deeper on for everybody. So can you share with everybody if you found so much, like that much more success in your short game and putting, right? Mm-hmm. What did you do differently in that last 30 days that you were able to see such a big shift?
Well, I had to work on putting a lot because my short putts, especially like 6 feet and in, I kept missing because I would just get so nervous over it that it'd just be bad. And then once I miss one, like consecutive 6 putts and in, or 6 feet in and after that, I just keep missing. So I've just started narrowing down on like those specific putts that I always miss, so that when I get to it, or when I got to it on the course, it'd just be like second nature.
Got it. I know for myself, I get like, just like that story I shared earlier with losing those balls to the right, and it kind of just got in my head. I'm sure everybody on this call probably feels the same way in some aspect, whether it's putting, whether it's chipping, um, whether it's tee shots, where like if you miss one, then it tends to stack, right? And this belief system in your head, you don't have that certainty on the next one, right? Is there anything specific that you can share that helped you get through that to then, like when you say you kind of fine-tune that and like worked on it, like what specifically would you say helped you the most to be able to now, if you did miss one, that you could recover and not have that false belief that you couldn't make it again?
Um, I've always had the same thought process of like the last hole. Well, I gained the thought process of the last hole is different than the hole that I'm on now. Like I can change that. But like with putting, I guess that never got into my head since like all the putting greens were like the same pace and stuff. But it wasn't the same case where it's like consistently the same putt every time. It's always different. So I just had to like figure out that I was putting a different putt every time and then making a different stroke every time. And I just had to focus on that stroke.
Okay, got it. So kind of I'm going to try and
Sorry.
no. I like what you said. Thanks for sharing. And I'll kind of frame that in a way. So for you personally, you kind of understood why you were doing it, and you understood the reason why it happens. And you know, those of us on this call, I'm sure we've all been there as well, because I'm sure I've been, you know, hundreds of times, maybe 1,000 times in my life, where I understood perfectly what I needed to do, why it was happening, but yet it continued to happen over and over again, right? And it doesn't matter how much on my form that I worked or how much on the skill that I thought I worked, right? It's just that consistency and discipline that you had that kind of took you through it. And I guess just you knowing that what you had to do, you just kept on working at it, right? And not veering off the path of just kind of settling with what you had, right? And you changed your approach a bunch of times until you found something for yourself that tend to click. Whereas, you know, for you, obviously for everybody it might be a little bit different, but how many times would you say you were trying to change the approach before you found one that worked? Like, so like now the one you said that worked probably was, you know, you focus on like the stroke or the shot at hand, right? To kind of get you through it and not worry about everything else, right? Did you kind of stumble on that, or did you try multiple things and that was the one that kind of gave you the best results and you kind of kept on going? Or did you just, that was it and you just kept on doing the same thing until it worked?
No, I probably tried a lot of different things. It's just I can't remember what they are.
Got it. So for everybody, right, know that, you know, Caitlin figured out something that she struggled with. For how long would you say you struggled with those short ones and then it kind of just blew up once you missed one?
Maybe like half the season, which is a long time.
Half the season?
So like
how long is
a month or so.
What's that?
A month or so, but that's like a lot of matches that's in that month.
Okay. Roughly how many matches did you say in a month?
8-ish. So it was like 2 weeks.
Okay. So like 8 matches, 8 rounds of golf, 1 month. And, you know, as when you're playing that frequently, right, it probably feels like forever. And, you know, sometimes we just got to know that we oftentimes may be practicing a lot and putting in all this time, but we're doing the same thing over and over. And we do the same drill, the same thing, hoping that's going to work better. And sometimes there's a point that you just know, right, that it's not going to work because you put in the discipline, you planned it all out, and you put in the time, and it doesn't get you any closer to the result that you want, right? So, you know, for everybody, sometimes if you're not planning it very well, and you're not prepared, then maybe it's working on that same thing until you prepare, until you put the intention in, until you show up how you want to show up, right? Until you're in that peak state practicing for it to take place. But if you're one of those who can get there, like assessing and knowing like, oh, I've tried this already. I did my best. I prepared. I talked to my coach and we refined it. And that's just not the approach, right? Knowing when to change approach, right? In your case, you are a disciplined player. You always communicate with your coaches and you're always on the right page. So it's about changing the approach until you get the result that you want, right? That oftentimes we change the result and we start to look for a different result as opposed to like, if there's a result you want to get, a lot of times you just have to change the approach until you get there. Actually, all the times you just change the approach until you actually get to the result that you want, right? And so thank you for sharing that. And we'll go one more quick one with anything that you're struggling on right now.
It's on and off with things that I'm struggling on, because sometimes I'll take like a week break because of school and then suddenly my swing is like okay, but then the next day it like goes bad again. But I've been struggling a lot with like driver recently.
With driver, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then so when you think about struggling with driver, what would be the number one cause? And it's not necessarily like, we're not looking for like swing mechanics, but what do you think the number one cause of your driver not performing the way you want it to?
Well, for this, it kind of is mostly swing mechanics, but like the tendency in my driver to which it was like bad, it was like a very low hook, but my number one like dislike when it comes to swings is hitting a fade. Like if it goes right at all, I really don't like it. I can't help it, I just don't like it. So like I think that dislike contributed to it a lot. So like in order to avoid hitting it right, I just hit it way too far left.
Okay.
I think. I don't know.
Oh, that's good, right? So you know what you have to work on, correct?
Sure, yeah.
Okay.
Yes,
and
I know what I have to work on.
Yeah, got it. And then what do you think is the biggest obstacle that prevents you from delivering what you know?
Time. It's like I don't have a ton of time to work on it.
Okay. When you do work on it, like how long are your practice sessions?
Hour to 2 hours.
Okay, and how long of that time is with your driver?
Like 15 minutes.
What's that?
Like 15 minutes.
1-5 or 5-0?
1-5.
1-5, right? So if for everybody thinking about like, if a lot of times we know what to do, and sometimes it's just doing an audit of our time spent, right? And obviously we do get things that get in the way, but if we practice for 2 hours, right, and we understand that the biggest thing that's going to change my fulfillment on the golf course, which drives my score down, the biggest thing that's going to affect my performance is my driving. And if I spend 2 hours and only 15 minutes of that 2 hours is going towards working on that driver, right, then you can see, you will just look at the logic and reality behind it. If I spend 15 minutes out of 2 hours, how much change how much change would I get given I'm only spending that much time out of the entire block, right? It doesn't matter if you practice 2 hours or 1 hour, right? If you think of that ratio, right, of time that you spend, if you just spend that same percent of time, whether you spend 10 minutes or 5 hours, right, the result that you'll get is going to be the same, right? So you have to look at, if you need to change it quickly, you need to be investing more of your time into the thing that you want to change. And so we need to then ask ourselves, why is it that I only spend 15 minutes out of 2 hours on the driver? And what would that answer be for you?
Um, because because I don't have a ton of time to practice, I have to practice everything. So I don't get bad or I don't get worse with the other clubs as well. Well, it's not an excuse, that's just why.
Okay. Right. So that's a good answer too, right? So that's like everybody thinking, like, if you've ever been there, if you're struggling at something, but you feel like you still got to practice everything because you don't want the entire game to go bad because you don't have that time, you got to actually sit down and you got to think, like, I guess my next question would be, like, have you ever sat down to think, what does it actually take to maintain the game that you have? So all the other components of your golf game that you spend time practicing in, to then maintain it, did you ever think, like, what could you do to just maintain? Like, how much activity, how much putts, how many chips, how much time is just for maintenance?
Are you asking me that question?
Have you ever sat down and thought about that?
um, Not really.
Right. So we can think then on saying, like, we rationalize with ourselves on why we do things, right? It'd be easy for anybody to come and say, well, it's crazy that you're doing that, but in our head it makes so much sense. So sometimes we just got to get more clarity on what we're doing and just say, like, well, I don't want the rest of my game to go so bad because it's going really well. But then you need to know that, like, how is the performance of all these other aspects of my game? And you need a plan that you have to have in place to say, for my putting, like the stuff that you just came over and you said you got massive success over the last couple month or so, like, what's the bare minimum that I can do to keep what I gain, right? And you do that in every single aspect of your game. Like, if I just need to keep what I have and maintain it, what skills test should I be doing to make sure I'm still at the level that I'm at, right? What kind of shots am I supposed to hit? So you're able to shift and put more of the time in the growth that you need to get, right? And then again, it's measuring your performance daily and weekly. So you know that as you're doing these little skills tests, you know if the rest of your game is performing or not. If you're not, if you're just like hitting balls and you're going through like a set amount of practicing or a set amount of activities that you normally do, but there's no like skills test, then you won't know. Like, you could be doing the same things and those things could be going backwards as well, right? So we just take it for granted that because I'm spending this time, I should be playing and keeping and maintaining it, right? And the whole idea is there's some parts that, you have to actually do work to maintain, but you also want to know, if you're not measuring and testing certain things and you don't have key little tests in those areas, then you fall into these scenarios where I feel like I got to do all of this to maintain, right? So sometimes if you only can practice a couple of days a week, you split that time in half, right? Maybe there's these practices that I can do in, like, you don't have to do everything in one day, but if you have 2 days, you split them in half, and half is for maintenance plus driving, and the other half is maintenance and driving, and you can give up just 1 day a week to maintain, right? And unless you test it against, right, you test it against what you're already doing, you'll never know what to do, right? So just always test against your control, I guess, is the part that I want to get. And it's for everybody, if you're never testing against your control, meaning if you're never testing against like what you're currently doing because that's getting you to perform well, you don't know if there's a better way. So some of us, may get into a situation where you haven't even built a very specific game plan on how to practice. And if you haven't got there yet, definitely design that first. But if you have like a plan and you have this course of action of, this is what I need to do to get the result that I want, you're always testing against the things that you're doing, because if you can save in one area 50% of time to get the same result, right, then you're wasting that 50% of time, right? Then it would be no longer trying to maintain, it would be building the skill. And if you're not building skill with additional time, right, then that's all this opportunity cost that you lose towards that area of your golf game. Does that make sense? Right. So, start implementing little skills tests and see what's the bare minimum that you can do so you can start investing your time into the things that is going to really take you forward in that driving, right? And you can put more focus because, do that initial audit to see 15 minutes out of 2 hours is not going to do much at all, right? So it's going to keep you in place. It's going to keep you frustrated more long. It's going to get you to accept the fact that I don't want to hit it right. That's why I hit that left shot right. Again, it's a belief that we believe in to get that result, just because we haven't spent enough time in that area to change that belief system and do the actions that you need to get yourself forward. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So I hope that was helpful for everyone. Thank you again for sharing.
Yeah, thanks for calling on me again.
Again.
I'm kidding.
All right. So thank you guys all for sticking with me this evening. We went quite a bit over tonight, but thank you guys for your patience and hanging in on the call. Those of you who came in late, I will send the recording out so you can watch the beginning of what we did. You guys all have a beautiful night, and we will see you all soon.